Hey y'all, it's Adrielle. Welcome back to another episode of DEI in 5. Today I am joined by a returning guest, Nick Carter, who is a DEI professional, who is pro-people, constantly curious, also is in the process of writing and self-publishing a book called Pandemoir, Stories from the Pandemic, and he's constantly looking for ways to understand more deeply and contribute to the larger community. So excited to have you back to have another conversation. I know today we're going to kind of go off the rip here, just kind of improvise, but we couldn't really find that many articles about this. But one thing that we were having some conversations about prior to recording is this idea of when it comes to hiring, people choosing diversity or having to choose merit. And there's like this argument, this belief that's being presented, especially from anti-DEI folks, that people should prioritize merit over diversity, and as if they are two separate things. And so, I wanted to bring that conversation to you because I again, we had this chat. It's been a month and a half, 2 months ago at this point. Yeah, we had a couple of ideas of things we wanted to talk about, but I mean, my take on it is, part of merit needs to include what someone's bringing to the table. Like, what are you bringing that's different? Like, am I just hiring someone else who looks, thinks, has had the same lived experiences as everyone else in this organization? Or am I thinking about bringing in someone, as we like to think about it now, culture add, someone who's going to come in and like really stretch the environment and challenge us and, call us out on stuff. Hey, I see that y'all have had the system in place for 10 years. It's not working. And can we do something about it? Right. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I think the one of the big things about this divide that we're seeing is just the idea that somehow EE and I and all of the things that represents is separate from the business in the first place. It's one and the same,
Right.
How you treat the people that you're employing, why would that be different than the services you're providing the clients or your customers? The way you think is sufficient for treating your employees is going to impact the service you can give your customers, because CEOs can't run the business themselves. That's part of the nature of it.
Right.
So,
Right.
That idea, I think, is interesting that they are separate, and it's with that reasoning that I think people say, well, we shouldn't be using the DEI approach to hiring as if it's a separate thing, like
Right.
instead, this idea of merit, which, by the way, I've read a lot of articles. No one's defining what merit means,
Are you
it's just like this
surprised?
gut thing that merit instead of
Yeah.
that. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we fully know what it means, but no, I have definitely want to hear your thoughts. I have some ideas about at least why they might be using the word, even if
Yeah.
they don't know what they mean by using it.
Right. I mean, I think yes, merit is subjective, right? I think what people, when they say merit, my general sense is that people are thinking about what makes a person qualified for a role, right? And I think traditionally we've been so conditioned, and the workforce has been so conditioned to be like, you need to meet these requirements or have this experience. You need a bachelor's degree, a master's degree. You need to know this particular program, this coding language, this accounting software, whatever that specific thing is. You need 10 years of experience, right? And I think part of us bringing in more DEI conversations has been making people realize and rethink that what the qualifications need to be for something. Do you actually need a master's degree for whatever this role is to be a coordinator, right? Or is it possible that you could come in and learn this on the job from experience, or combine your previous experiences, right? And so I think that's what I think of when I hear merit is qualifications, education, experiences.
Yeah.
And I think when you think about that, then that means that diversity is a part of merit, because diversity is simply the mix of differences and experiences that we're bringing, right? And so there needs to be some reflection on that, I think, right? I mean, I've worked with clients who have started, as part of their interview process, particularly for leaders, new leaders coming in, is asking them about DEI. So how do you foster an inclusive, psychologically safe space for your team members, right? And so that's one aspect, but also, what different experiences are they bringing to the table? Or are you just hiring somebody who has the same exact experiences over and over and the same shared background? And that's the problem. And I think the last thing I'll add is I think that a lot of this is rooted in the fact that people have such a narrow definition of diversity. Typically, people are defaulting to think of diversity as race and ethnicity from jump. Sometimes gender and sexuality, but usually, at least in America, people default, they hear diversity and it means black and white, pretty much. And that's a problem in itself too.
100%. There are so many different ways people can be different. So I hear you on that. Yeah. The point you brought up, I thought, is a big one, and like I talk about this every now and then on LinkedIn with people, but DEI, I think, is at an evolution point. There are a few things that have been, the groundwork has been laid, which is super important. But there are some ways that I think we got to evolve in terms of how we see and talk about, the core of what we're really after. I think one of those ways, at least in hiring, is the whole idea of like affirmative action and things like that were very good ways to correct the problem of how come these people got it worse like in history, right. Trying to correct that. And I think that going forward, the experience that you brought up needs to be part of what we're trying to discern when we're picking the right candidate. Because let's say we want to hire somebody in this particular team. They're front facing, customers facing kind of software. That's the position. But we need to hire somebody potentially who can speak to a black audience or an African American audience or minoritized group of some sort. So that doesn't mean then I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, everybody else leave. All the black people come over. That's not what we want to do, because who says that any of those other people, especially since DEI is more widely known, and the benefits of it are known, who's to say that those other non-black people don't have experiences that will lead into this particular position, right? Right. I think that we have to change how we're hiring in terms of like what we're looking for and how we're using questions and whatever hiring steps there are to weed that out. If we're not looking for experiences, then if I'm a hiring manager, what else would I do? I would have to look at the color of your skin or something instead of the content of your character, like MLK was saying. I'd have to, unless we evolve and start articulating a better way of doing business, experience. So the experience part you brought up, I think that's that's one of the next steps that DEI will take to just it's not that anything was wrong before, it's just we understand it better and better.
Yeah, definitely. I think the experience piece has to be incorporated into the hiring process and thinking about how we're hiring people. And I know a lot of these conversations have been a part of academics and academia really, and universities, because we're seeing, I think we were just talking about this a few days ago, Governor Abbott in Texas officially signed into law that they're pretty much getting rid of diversity offices or DEI offices at public universities in Texas, which is unfortunate. That's worth another video in itself.
Did he say what he was replacing them with?
I haven't even, I saw the headline. I was like, I can't read this today. So I don't even know. I'm going to read it at some
Fair.
point, but I couldn't. I was like, not today. But part of all of that movement we've seen not only in Texas but Florida as well and some other states has also involved them taking away like the diversity component of applications for students and for faculty and things like that. And if diversity isn't going to happen on its own, especially at institutions that historically have lacked diversity, that have been quite homogenous. You're not going to just, without any effort or intention, magically have a diverse education system or university or college, right, whether you were thinking about students or faculty. And so to remove that piece, I can't wait to see the data. I mean, I could wait because I don't want this to happen, but it is happening. But just to see the comparison over a year, 2 years of how the demographics shift without them having those checks and balances in place to be like, okay, we are lacking in this area. I think it's gonna significantly change, these universities that already, again, are not the most diverse in a lot of cases. So it's unfortunate. And I think, again, I hate that we have such a narrow view and understanding. And in some cases, I think it's intentional for some people. And it goes back to the whole idea of like that study around psychological threat and how that's part of the whole DEI resistance. People, there's 3 forms that they talk about. It's status threat, it's merit threat, and then moral threat. And I think a lot of this is the merit threat, right? People are like, I've worked hard and I want to be assessed for this and this only, thinking that you can somehow just like separate yourself, like and mutate. I don't know.
It's a real individualistic way of thinking.
Yeah.
Not much judgment there because we can't help where we pop out, end up growing up at. That's part of the culture in America. But like the idea of saying, I've done these things, so I deserve certain roles.
Right.
The done things, it has no conversation with like the environment you're stepping into or like how you're going to benefit things. You're saying because I've done these things, I deserve the role. That's I think the thinking of someone's experience, that's where that comes in. It's like, because you have done these things, I see how they will apply and how you will establish certain relationships or with clients, with internal, like the relationship part, not just the achievement part. Right. The relationship part and the insights you can impart are important too. I just don't think we talk about them that often in terms of like why someone would qualify for something.
Right.
Just because like I did this sounds so much simpler and like it's it confers a lot of status, in a way where like just talking about your experience, well, that's a longer conversation. It doesn't have like an exclamation point. I think it's potentially more useful.
Yeah. I think, I think what you're kind of touching on is like the soft skills, the empathy building, the interpersonal skills that people need to come with as well. And so much of that is lacking because, again, this merit threat concept is really, to your point, it's really centered around individualism. It's kind of, folks that have this merit-based approach or that have merit threat at play are really typically trying to be committed to like a value system. This whole, especially in America, you work hard, you're going to achieve things, and that completely negates the fact that doesn't work well or doesn't work for everyone. You can't, for a lot of people, you can work 20 times as hard as the person next to you and still not get half as far as they've gotten. And that could be a result of your identity, you being marginalized. It could be a result of you not having access to things. So many things apply. There's this like constant like idea of picking yourself up by the bootstraps, and it's like that just completely negates oppression, and the fact that by design so many systems and processes were made to support a majority group, while others have to kind of flail and hope that they can maybe
Yeah, 100%.
get a break, catch a break,
My
and
boots don't have bootstraps. My boots don't even have straps.
Oh goodness. I haven't seen a pair of boots with straps in a minute. Little loops, I guess, but not straps.
Yeah, I got strapless boots.
Oh,
It
goodness.
reminds me of Monopoly. How if you start at the same time, everybody has a fair chance of winning. But like, for a lot of minoritized groups, we didn't enter America at the same time. Black people didn't enter America willingly.
Yeah.
There are a lot more Native Americans here than are now. Some stuff happened to kind of dwindle down. So like, if this is a monopoly board, you can't look at everybody and be like, should have worked harder. There were a
Right?
few things that affected that.
Right. We did not start with the same amount of money. We didn't have the same amount of property. We didn't have the same number of skill sets, resources, access, education. Think about the trauma, and we know for a fact that generational trauma is passed down. It's imprinted in DNA cells. Like, we're not there. The playing field was never level, and to see it level out, I don't know if we ever will in our lifetime. Especially with so many different perspectives and thoughts on where we should be going and how we should be perceiving the world, and knowing now that we're in the midst of this, at the height of, I hope it doesn't get worse, of this capitalistic society and individualistic approach. It's like, how do you get everybody to just pivot back into a community of sorts, or pivot towards thinking in a community like way? I don't know.
That's the pivot point, though. I think it's enough people there. Like, I am one person. I think there are a lot of really clever minds with different perspectives enough, and we've reached a boiling point where, it's going to start to swing the other way, where we stop thinking, man, having to eat is going to a grocery store, a chain grocery store across the country, and depending on them to supply stuff. Or maybe we do more communal things to solve our needs.
Right.
I think we're getting to that point. Because if not, at least for the price of eggs, the price of eggs are gonna swing us over.
Right. I hear you. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, I know we were trying to keep this short today. Any final thoughts or things that are top of mind for you that you want to share before we wrap up?
Yeah. Only thing I'll share is just, I think the biggest impact DEI will have is it will train a generation of people to answer difficult questions. They landed on the Plymouth Rock. It's a bunch of Europeans that need to survive. There's a bunch of Native Americans that, funny enough, had the same motivations, but somehow we couldn't figure out a situation where both people could live and coexist with their priorities on an even scale. And we're still answering those same types of questions today. Like, how do I do this in a way that respects you and me on an equal? So when we start answering these DEI questions and doing it well, we change paradigms, but I think we start doing what and I say this despite the fact that my ancestors are not European, we start making decisions how we should have when we first got here.
Yeah, amen to that. Ooh, a word. Drops mic. I don't have anything to add other than like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel for more. I'm definitely gonna have Nick back for another episode, and I'll see y'all back here very soon. All right, y'all. Bye.